The scream came first. High, broken, and distant like glass shattering behind a closed door. Then my phone rang. "Mrs. Lane," a voice gasped. "There's someone in your house." For a moment, the world around me went mute. Cars blurred past on Bay Street. Sunlight flared off windshields, but all I heard was my pulse hammering in my ears. "Alina, what do you mean?" I managed to whisper. Her breath hitched. Footsteps. Upstairs. Slow ones. A pause. "He's moving." I slammed my car into a U-turn, tires screeching. "Get out! Do not look back! I'm calling the police!" Static swallowed her next words. Then a soft thud, the unmistakable crack of a door slamming shut. "Alina." Silence. I drove faster than I had in years. The kind of reckless speed you only reach when your fear outweighs your reason. The old houses along the river blurred past, their porches and iron balconies shimmering in the heat. I kept the call open, listening for any sound, any proof she was still breathing. When I finally pulled up, the front door was open, my curtains fluttering like torn sails. Alina was crouched on the sidewalk, shaking, her cleaning gloves still on. Her face was white as bone. "I heard him," she whispered. "He was walking right above me." The sirens came soon after two cruisers, blue lights slicing the humid dusk. Officer Hendricks, young and polite, led the search while I stood clutching Alina's wrist, as if holding her kept the house from swallowing us both. They checked every floor, every closet, even the attic crawl space I hadn't opened in years. Nothing. No footprints. No dust disturbed. No forced locks. When Hendricks returned, he wiped sweat from his forehead. "Old houses talk, ma'am," he said gently. "They settle, breathe. You'd be amazed what echoes sound like in these walls." I tried to believe him, but when he turned away, I glanced up toward the attic window. For half a second, before the curtain fell still, I saw it a shadow shifting behind the glass. By morning, the house looked ordinary again, sunlight pooling across the wooden floors. The faint smell of lemon cleaner still clinging to the air. Alina had left a message saying she was sorry, but couldn't come back. I couldn't blame her. Even I didn't want to be here. My daughter Iris arrived around noon, heels clicking sharp against the porch steps. 37. Always composed. She carried herself like the city had given her an extra layer of armor. Her blazer still smelled faintly of the perfume she'd worn since college, amber and ambition. She listened to my story with arms folded, her phone lighting up between us every few seconds. "Mom," she said finally, "you scared that poor girl half to death over a noise. These old houses settle, pipes rattle, floors moan. It's just physics." I watched her eyes flick toward the attic staircase, just once, then quickly away. "It wasn't physics," I said quietly. Alina heard footsteps. She's not the nervous type. Iris exhaled through her nose, that patient with you but busy tone she used with clients. "You've lived here alone too long. You jump at sounds. Maybe it's time we look at condos something manageable. Close to people." The word manageable stung more than it should have. I told her I wasn't leaving. This house had outlasted my husband, my career, nearly everything that made me who I was. I wasn't giving it up for echoes. By the time she left, the light had gone soft and gold. The house felt still, but not empty like someone was holding their breath inside it. I made tea, read for a while, told myself to stop thinking about the attic. Then, close to midnight, a sound drifted down through the ceiling, a chair scraping wood. Slow, deliberate. I froze, listening. Another creak, and then a long pause. As if whoever was up there had realized I was awake. I whispered, "Is someone there?" The house fell silent again, utterly, perfectly silent, except for the faint hum of my own pulse in the dark. 3 days passed before I let myself believe the house had quieted. I told myself I was just tired, that the mind exaggerates when it's lonely. I even hummed while making breakfast, trying to drown out the stillness. But when I opened the bread box, half the loaf was gone. I stared at the torn end of the wrapper, frayed and uneven, as if someone had ripped it in a hurry. I checked the counter, the trash, even the porch where I sometimes left food for stray cats. Nothing. It wasn't hunger that twisted in my stomach. It was recognition. Something was wrong, but I didn't know how to name it. Later that afternoon, while washing dishes, I reached for my favorite mug, the one with TL, etched in fading gold. It wasn't in the cabinet. I searched every shelf, the sink, the dishwasher, even the pantry. Gone. I hadn't used it in months, but it always sat in the same corner like an heirloom, steady and untouched. By evening, the unease had settled into my chest like a weight. I climbed the stairs and stopped in front of the attic door. The latch gleamed faintly in the dim light, a newer shade of brass, clean against the older wood. I ran a finger over it. Smooth. Too smooth. Someone had replaced it recently. I couldn't remember the last time I'd touched it. The next morning, Iris came by with coffee and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She listened as I told her about the bread, the mug, the latch. She laughed. That quick, professional laugh she used when a client complained. "Mom, you probably just moved things around and forgot. Or maybe the cleaner did before she quit." She stood by the window while I spoke, gaze fixed on her phone, nails tapping the screen. But when I mentioned the attic latch, her shoulders tensed. For a second, just one, she didn't breathe. Then she turned and smiled again. Too quickly, honestly. "Mom, you need a hobby. You're imagining patterns." I didn't argue. I just watched her leave, her heels clicking down the hall, echoing like footsteps retreating into the ceiling. By the end of the week, the air in Savannah thickened until it felt alive. Storm clouds crouched low over the city, pressing down on the rooftops, turning the streets into mirrors of dark water. Inside, the house held the same humidity, every wall damp with memory. I tried to keep busy laundry, mending curtains, small things to keep my mind from circling back to what was missing, but even the air seemed to resist me. When I opened a window, the hinges groaned. When I closed a drawer, the wood sighed back. The house breathed, slow and stubborn, as if it had lungs of its own. That night, thunder cracked over the river, shaking the glass panes. I poured myself tea and sat near the stairwell, watching rain trace the window's edges. My hand drifted to the banister, and I caught myself remembering 12 years ago, when Thomas and I stripped this railing down to bare oak, laughing at how the varnish clung to our fingers like honey. He'd been patient, meticulous, the kind of man who believed anything broken could be fixed if you gave it time. Now, as the wind surged outside, the wood seemed to shift under my palm, the faintest vibration, like something stirring inside it. I stood, uneasy, and climbed the stairs. The upper hall was darker than it should have been, the bulbs flickering in their sockets, the air heavy with that sweet, metallic scent that storms carry before they break. I almost turned back until the smell changed. Not rain, not wood polish, cologne. The exact one Thomas used to wear, the cedar and smoke I hadn't smelled in more than a decade. It drifted through the hallway in a faint ribbon of scent, too deliberate to be memory. I reached for the wall, my hand trembling against the wallpaper we'd chosen together. The light flickered again, and for a moment, the house seemed to exhale, timbers creaking, floorboards tightening as if responding to me. I whispered his name, barely a breath. The air went still, holding it. Then somewhere above, a single floorboard gave a slow, deliberate groan. The rain had passed, but the smell of it lingered, a damp sweetness that clung to the curtains and wood like breath after a whisper. I decided to clean the study. More to quiet my thoughts than to tidy anything. Dust had gathered thick on the shelves, softening the corners of books Thomas once stacked in neat, perfect rows. It had been years since I'd opened his desk. The key still hung from a small ribbon in my sewing drawer, where I'd hidden it after the funeral. When I turned it in the lock, the click sounded too loud for such a small gesture. Inside lay a nest of yellowed receipts, a rusted fountain pen, and the faint scent of tobacco, his kind, the one that left the air warm and sharp. I emptied the drawers one by one, wiping each down. When I reached the bottom, I noticed the vent behind the desk, one we'd painted over long ago. The grill hung crooked, its screws loose. I don't know what made me kneel, only that something in the room felt off balance, as if a corner of it waited to be found. Behind the vent sat a small wooden box, its lid carved with delicate initials, T.L. My chest tightened. The latch stuck, but when it opened, I saw neat stacks of paper inside pages filled with looping, deliberate handwriting. Each one was signed the same way at the bottom corner, T.L. 2018. My throat went dry. 2018. 6 years after the day he supposedly died. I carried the pages to the window light, holding one beside an old letter I kept in the desk's top drawer. The handwriting matched perfectly, the same careful curls on every T, the same slant in the L that dipped like a sigh. I sat down hard. The box balanced on my knees, rainwater dripping faintly from the eaves outside. The words blurred as I read the first line. When guilt grows roots, even the grave cannot hold it. I pressed the paper to my chest, the ink still sharp under my fingers. Somewhere above, the floorboards murmured, and the house seemed to breathe again. I woke to the sound of whispering. At first, I thought it was the wind again, threading through the shutters the way it sometimes does after rain. But then I heard it clearly, a woman's voice, low and careful, speaking just above a breath. I held still, listening. The sound drifted through the vent above my bed, the same one that connected to the attic. Between the soft pulses of the ceiling fan, the words began to form. He's getting weaker, the voice said. My body went cold. It was Iris's voice. I would have known it anywhere. I sat up, straining to catch every syllable. The next part was fainter. A pause. Then stay quiet. Don't let her hear you. The sheets slipped from my hands. Iris hadn't stayed overnight in months. She lived across town in a bright apartment she never stopped bragging about. What was she doing here, and who was she talking to? The whispering stopped as suddenly as it began. The silence afterward pressed against my ears, thick as fog. I waited a minute, then another, before pulling on my robe and stepping into the hallway. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet, each sound magnified, like the house was holding its breath along with me. Upstairs, the air was colder. I climbed one step at a time until I stood before the attic door. A thin strip of light glowed beneath it, flickering faintly, like from a candle or a small lamp. My heart thudded in my throat. I reached for the knob. It didn't move. I twisted harder, but it was bolted from the inside. I knocked once, softly. No answer. Only the faint sound of something shifting, the scrape of wood against wood. Iris, I whispered. Nothing. Then a quiet click, like a switch being turned off. The light beneath the door went dark. I stood there for a long time, my hand still on the knob, listening to the silence fill every corner of the house. By dawn, I hadn't slept. The image of that flickering light above my ceiling gnawed at me until I couldn't stand it anymore. At first light, I crossed the street to Mr. Whitmore's house, the retired locksmith who'd lived 2 doors down since before Thomas died. His eyes, sharp behind thick glasses, widened when I asked for help opening a stuck attic door. He followed me back, toolbox in hand, his limp slowing us on the stairs. Probably just a swollen frame, he murmured, crouching at the latch. Happens in old wood. But the bolt wasn't old, it gleamed new against the dusty hinges. Whitmore gave me a look that said he knew better than to ask. He pressed the pick, twisted, and the metal gave with a sigh. When the door opened, a wave of stale air rolled out dust, candle smoke, something faintly sour like sickness. I lifted a trembling hand to the wall, searching for the switch. But there was none. Only the weak orange glow of half-burned candles scattered across the floor. In the far corner, behind a stack of crates, someone sat in a wooden chair. The shape moved slightly, slow and uneven. "Hello?" My voice barely carried. The figure turned. The world tilted beneath me. It was Thomas. He looked impossibly small, cheeks hollow, eyes sunk deep, beard matted with gray. His skin was the color of paper. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. 12 years collapsed into a single heartbeat. He tried to stand but couldn't. His voice came out rough, almost breaking. "Marjorie, you weren't supposed to see me." Behind me, footsteps thundered up the stairs. Iris burst into the doorway, her face white, her words tumbling out. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I was protecting you, both of you." Thomas closed his eyes, a weary smile ghosting across his face. "I faked it," he whispered. "The debt, the papers, everything. I thought I'd save us from the ruin. But she," he looked at Iris, "she found me, kept me alive, used your name to keep us hidden." My knees buckled. Somewhere in the distance, the storm began again, rolling through the house like the sound of something breaking open. Thomas sat hunched in the chair, candlelight trembling across the hollow planes of his face. His hands shook as he spoke, the words scraping out like stones dragged through mud. "I didn't just owe money," he said. "I took it. From men who trusted me, friends, partners. I thought I could fix it before anyone knew. But when the papers started closing in, I panicked. I made it look like an accident. Let them think I was gone." I stood frozen, my throat tightening with every word. The man who taught me honesty was the only thing worth leaving behind, had vanished into his own lie. Iris knelt beside him, clutching his arm. "I found him, Mom," she whispered. "A year after the funeral. He was sick, starving. I couldn't turn him in. He said he'd make it right if he had time. So I helped him." Her voice broke. "I just wanted to keep us safe. The money he wired, the accounts he left, I used them for the house, the bills, everything you have. Mom, it came from him." The air thinned until I could barely breathe. The mortgage I'd paid, the roof I'd repaired, the quiet security I thought I'd earned, all of it funded by deceit. Thomas leaned forward, his breath ragged. "I wanted to protect you. I thought if I stayed dead, the world would forget." I backed away, my hand pressed against the wall. "You didn't protect us," I said. "You buried us with you." I reached for my phone. Iris's eyes widened. "Mom, please," she said. "He won't survive a day in prison. He's dying. Just let him stay here until—" She couldn't finish. The house was so quiet that I could hear the rain beginning again outside, tapping gently against the roof, the same rhythm I'd mistaken for footsteps so many nights. My thumb hovered over the screen. The number already dialed. Thomas's head dropped, the candles flickering in the draft. Somewhere deep inside me, grief tangled with fury until I couldn't tell them apart. The truth was here now, breathing in my house, and it would not be buried again. The storm finally broke in the night. Rain hammered the roof like 1,000 hurried footsteps, and every corner of the house seemed to echo with what had been said. I sat in the hallway outside the attic, unable to move, listening to the wind slip through the cracks. Thomas was quiet upstairs. Iris had fallen asleep against the wall, her head buried in her arms. I didn't trust myself to touch either of them. Sometime before dawn, the candlelight above dimmed, above, then the sound of shuffling feet, slow and deliberate, descending the stairs. When I looked up, Thomas was standing there, dressed in the same coat he'd worn the day of his supposed death. His face was gray, calm in a way that frightened me. "I took your piece once," he said softly, his voice rasping. "I won't do it again." He placed an envelope on the banister and looked toward Iris, still sleeping. For a moment, his eyes softened, almost fatherly again. Then he turned toward the door. I wanted to stop him to ask where he thought he could possibly go, but the words wouldn't come. He stepped out into the rain, the front door closing with a sound that seemed too final for wood and hinges. When the sun rose, a police cruiser idled by the river. They found him near the embankment, cold water pulling at his coat, his body half submerged in reeds. In the pocket of his shirt, they found the same envelope, sealed now, soaked but still legible. Inside, one line in his careful hand: "Forgive her before you forgive me. Iris didn't cry when they came for her. The investigators traced years of falsified transfers through my accounts. The signatures, the withdrawals. She walked out with her wrists bound, her eyes hollow. In court, when the prosecutor asked if I wanted restitution, I told them no. There was nothing to return. Everything that mattered had already been spent. Our truth, our trust, the small, ordinary peace I once mistook for love. I only said we all built our walls with lies, and the courtroom fell silent. Spring returned to Savannah with its soft light and slow forgiveness. The storms passed. The moss dried on the oak branches, and the air carried the scent of rain without the weight of it. I stayed in the house. Everyone told me to sell it, to start fresh somewhere new, but I couldn't. Leaving would have felt like running again, and I'd had enough of that to last a lifetime. The police sealed the attic for months while they collected evidence. When they finally let me reclaim it, I climbed the stairs alone. The air no longer smelled of dust or sickness. Only wood and faint traces of lemon oil from the cleaning crew. Sunlight streamed through the small window, the same one that had once looked like a watchful eye and spread across the floor in quiet gold. I placed a single chair beneath that window. Nothing else. No boxes. No curtains. Just light. Every morning, I climb those stairs with a cup of coffee and sit there for a while, listening to nothing but the old beams expanding in the warmth. The silence no longer unnerves me. It breathes with me. I've started writing again. At first, just notes in the margins of old ledgers, then full pages memories, pieces of truth, fragments of the years I'd let slip through fear. I named the manuscript "The Man Upstairs." Some chapters are harder than others. Some sentences tremble as I write them. But I keep going, sometimes. When the morning sun hits just right, the shadow of the banister stretches across the wall, and for a moment, it almost looks like someone standing beside me, familiar, patient, unburdened. I don't look away. I keep writing. The truth didn't break my home, it emptied it, so light could come in.